Hello, guys and gals, me Mutahar, and you know what I love to see? Good old-fashioned disgusting criminals on the dark web taken down. Now, one thing that I love is, the deep web, the dark web. It's really this mystical place where, like, a lot of, I guess you could say, like, evil is rumored to happen, and there is really a lot of evil that happens on the dark web. Just as likely as there is a lot of goofy stuff that occurs. But obviously, I'm not going to sugarcoat it. Obviously, one of the most profitable things on the dark web is ransoming people's data, stealing their data, and selling it for big money, okay? Now, about a year ago, I want to say February 2024, you might have remembered a video that I made regarding a group known as Lockbit, and how the United States government was handing out, like, bounties like candy. So for instance, if you decided to go to Lockbit's website right there, you were greeted with this page where it would tell you the US government, the United Kingdom, and the Kronos Task Force controls it. So believe it or not, the international police got together and decided to dox and harass this criminal organization that they hacked, and they were just like starting to leak everything they had, back-end leaks, so on and so forth. But importantly, one of the questions they asked was, who is Lockbit Sup? Now, you could have earned like 15 million US dollars if you could give information that would help the United States government identify this person. So if anybody tells you, computers aren't big business, you'd be surprised. And believe it or not, eventually the US government did in fact apparently leak out who the hell was responsible. A guy known as Dmitry Yurovich Koroshev. So this is apparently the guy, a Russian national, a leader of Lockbit, one of the apparent primary operators, okay? The guy known as Lockbit Sup. Now obviously, our friend Koroshev denies these crazy allegations. And, obviously, I don't think the government is denying it. I mean, they have an entire press release about this person. I mean, if you're a criminal, the government will dox you. The government will entirely give out your information. They do not care, okay? If they want you, they will get you. Luckily, Koroshev lives in the Russian Federation, meaning that, if you're going to try extraditing him, good luck with that, I guess. Now, if you're really looking at Lockbit, for instance, and who the hell they actually were, the reality of them is that throughout the course of their entire operation, they probably ended up making somewhere over 1 billion US dollars, okay? So to give you an idea, there are drug cartels that make that amount of money, okay? They've got a lot of shit going on. These are a bunch of keyboard warriors, keyboard samurais, if you will, sitting down, hacking big companies, and getting money. Now, normally, I would probably sit here and, again, just say, oh, it's a bunch of keyboard samurai making billions of dollars. Unfortunately, it seems as though that Lockbit really didn't care who they hit, okay? It wasn't just big companies. They decided to go after hospitals like St. Anthony in Chicago and the Sick Kids Hospital in Toronto, allegedly, of course, which obviously, if you're targeting a hospital, that's bad enough, but if you're targeting a hospital with literally sick children as the primary focus, I just also want to clarify that Lockbit did come out and actually apologize that their software was used by somebody who violated their rules and used their software against a hospital for sick children. Thankfully, they did give decryption software, but there was unfortunately still actual damage and delays done. But of course, beyond just hospitals, obviously I don't think the government entirely cares much about that. Lockbit also decided to hack energy companies in places like Italy and India, which again, when you're hacking energy companies, critical infrastructure, that's what's going to piss off any government, okay? The port of Nagoya in Japan, hacked by these people, effectively a port that handled around 10% of the country's trade. Yeah, it's not exactly something that, any country is going to be too happy with, which is one of the main reasons why, when cops band together to hunt these people, it's usually because you've decided to get a little bit too brazen with your attacks. So Operation Kronos happened, Lockbit was effectively crippled to no end, but it didn't mean that they were out, okay? Just because you got crippled didn't mean that these people eventually went their own different directions and came back and started to upload and started to hack more people, Now, ransoms are pretty serious hacks, okay? So to give you an idea with ransomware, let's say that you're la-di-da-di-da-di-da-di sitting on a computer browsing the internet and you get this magical file delivered to you, right? Now, let's say you decided, oh man, this shady application, this shady PDF file, let me just double-click that. So you double-click it, everything's, hunky-dory. You might see the command prompt pop up for a minute. And that's scary because what happens afterwards is your entire, computer, the files, your network, everything on your system just goes away. So the way that a ransomware like this worked, or at least Lockbit, is that eventually every single file on your computer would have this magic extension, okay? It could be .abcd, it could be .fuck, it could be .whatever. But point is, these files would be encrypted, and these files may be sent off to Lockbit. But ultimately, in the end of it, you would be sitting there with a completely unusable system. Now, let's say that you had a backup sitting around, maybe it's a significantly older, whatever. Depending on how large your institution is, it could cost you millions of dollars to get back up and running. So for instance, remember a while back when we looked at how Las Vegas, like some of their casinos, ended up getting hacked and ransomed? Yeah, it was something where they had to consider just paying the actual ransom so that they wouldn't keep losing money every single day. And that's kind of the focus point, So again, if you're not careful with shit sent to your system, you could actually cause yourself some serious harm. And depending on how big your company is, depending on how important your company is, you can harm plenty of other people in the process, okay? And for companies like this, they sell ransomware as a service, okay? Meaning that they specialize and customize and send out special builds, and people hire them so they can run these attacks. So why am I talking about Lockbit in this way? Why did I go through this entire summarization again of them? Well, it's because they decided to get a little bit into the news once again, ladies and gentlemen. Turns out they ended up actually getting pwned once again. So I saw this little image around, "Don't do crime, crime is bad, XOXO from Prague." So Lockbit is back, and while they were back, some other person came in out of a revenge hack, if you will, so to speak, and just fucked them in the ass again. Now I wanted to verify this for myself, and actually going to Lockbit's Onion address, which some of this is censored because I don't want to actually leak the address of some of these criminal organizations. I'm sure you can understand. Yes, somebody did in fact say, crime is bad. So inside here, they gave a panel dump .zip. Now, I downloaded this, and before we continue with the jokes and the goofs and the gaffs on this channel, do not download anything from these places, okay? Leave it to the professionals. So this panel dump that I have, this file that I downloaded, is around 27.6 megabytes in size. It's a SQL dump, so we can actually open up and see some of the juicy secrets from Lockbit with our own eyes. Again, I highly stress you don't download any files and run them. The only reason I do this is because I might be stupid, but this is probably the only thing that I'm a professional at, okay? So give me that. So inside over here, one of the interesting things in all these lines is one thing that you can identify is this was generated around April 29, 2025, meaning that these people were hacked around this given time, okay? And that's an important thing to say. It's pretty recent, so that's when they were hacked in. That's when this was generated and dumped. So one of the important things about this dump is multiple different pieces of data. So one of them is BTC addresses, okay? So these people's Bitcoin address wallets were effectively fucking leaked. Now, the thing about Bitcoin and what makes this shit so important is that you can throw any address into an actual blockchain explorer and start to get an idea for how much money and how they were moving this money. So this one address that I dug out from their communications ended up actually showcasing that they received, in this address alone, $3,700, and then they sent $3,700, okay? In another address, they also moved around similar amounts of money. Now, the thing about this address that's so important is that for a lot of these guys who are making hundreds of millions of dollars, you kind of wonder, how the fuck do you move money in a public blockchain? How do you move money when every single nerd on the internet can trace your transaction? When nerds like me, Coffee, ZachXBT, tons of nerds who have nothing better to do than look through numbers can trace every single transaction. Now, of course, they have hundreds of wallets and tons of mixing services that they've laundered their money through. So the important part about this leak in particular is anything that they were trying to move around can now be analyzed by cops, like actual law enforcement officers, and they can trace how they move money, what new laundering methods they've made, and possibly even lock down funds that these people desperately need or need to use, okay? It's like fucking actually shutting down an operation. You know, you can't use your money when, when every fucking federal agency has it tagged, okay? That's just how it works. The best thing about cryptocurrency is actually just how nakedly transparent things can be. So a big L being handed out to our boys in crime here, so to speak. Now, this leak has also been verified. One of the things that I wanted to just ensure is that this wasn't fake. Otherwise, I wouldn't really want to be talking about it. So one of the guys who broke this story, Ray XBF, ended up actually talking to Lockbit Sup. Now, again, the US government has kind of doxed this person, and that person has denied it. So I'm just going to go and assume that Lockbit Sup here is still an anonymous somewhat entity. Not to think that this guy will ever get arrested unless, you know, the feds like kidnap this guy in like Russia, which is highly unlikely. Okay, this guy might be a criminal, but I don't think he's a criminal worth like starting an international incident over. Okay, we have enough of that going on in parts of the world right now. Now, it's safe to say at the same time this was happening, another criminal cyber gang known as the I believe it's the Everest gang. They ended up actually getting hacked by Don't Do Crime, Crime is Bad, Love from Prague. So there's like cyber vigilante. It's walking around fucking John Wicking these criminal databases and just leaking this shit out. It's kind of crazy, dude. We've got literal Batman roaming the fucking internet tubes right now. So, of course, when confronted by Ray, all right, Lockbit's pwn, anything on that? Lockbit support comes out about only the light panel and auto registration was hacked. Not a single decryptor and stolen company data were damaged, okay? So anyways, Ray's like, so yeah, but that just means Bitcoin addresses, conversation keys. I mean, that affects your reputation, right? But Lockbit, the locker builder, and source code was not stolen, which is the software they use and they sell and pimp out to get people to hire them, right? The ransomware as a service part. Will you return to work? How long will it take? So Lockbit support is like, only the addresses and conversations were stolen, okay? Not a single decryptor was stolen. Yes, it affects reputation, but recovery from hacking also affects reputation, okay? Remember, these people are in the business of hacking people, okay? If all of a sudden the decryptors were stolen, their entire money-making venture that exists right now, whatever remains, would be gone. So anyways, Ray's like, all right, good luck with that. I mean, good luck with your criminal enterprise. I'm gonna fuck off and do my own thing. It's crazy how this can just happen on the internet. Like the reason I love making these videos is I love like kind of pulling back the curtain and showing you online digital cyber crime as it happens. And not just show you digital cyber crime, but the innate war between cyber criminals and vigilantes and federal agents that love to sit on. It's literally all just different types of keyboard warriors all fighting over this Wild West we call the goddamn internet. So obviously, in amongst all this, a lot of their chat messages and the way they talked to a lot of these guys they hacked ended up also getting leaked. So it gave a good insight into how they operated when it came to like, you know, basically getting somebody by the balls. So for instance, it's kind of hard to read, but I'll try to like blur out and like, you know, target specific things. Hello, Gelco Gelatinas do Brasil. Your network was penetrated. Servers are completely encrypted with our special algorithm. And also we've downloaded sensitive data from your file servers. In case if you won't cooperate with us, then everything would be published and or sold. We also found a lot of contact information about your employees, clients, partners, etc. In case of your refusal to cooperate, we'll try to convey information about the leak of your data to each of these contacts. We offer you make a deal and resolve this smoothly. All encrypted files will be restored. You'll avoid data leaks and we'll provide you a proof of deleting all your data from our servers. Again, that also relies that you trust the criminals that you're dealing with, which, again, I would never trust these people at all. The total weight of your files is approximately 100 gigabytes. Now, all these services would end up costing them $150,000 US, okay? So this is a good example of what the negotiations look like. So for instance, according to this message, right, like obviously the discussions of discounting, for instance, right, because obviously some of these organizations would consider this to be too expensive. They would just go, if you don't make a decision, the price is literally 2x tomorrow. So again, they're literally pleading like the actual victims. Please don't misunderstand the interest to find a way to pay you with insult. That was not my point. I respect your talking with us right now. So again, literally, these people are actually scared, right? They're completely scared here in this situation. They want to get their data back. They want to get their businesses back. And these guys are like, the price will be $60,000, your decision to pay or not. And again, they're like, is there a way to recover just a few computers with a small amount? Like, yada, 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 yada. And they were just like, no, you got to pay the whole thing or we just leak this information out. I mean, it's fucking insane, right? Like, cold-blooded levels of hacks. They do not care. So again, this is literally what they've done. This is literally how they've pushed it onto people. And again, it was not something that was even negotiable too, right? Like if you didn't pay them, what would happen is if you go to their actual dark web website, if you didn't pay by a certain deadline, well, congratulations, you lost all access to your data, okay? Everyone in the world can download it completely for free. And these people really didn't have anything to lose, okay? If you weren't willing to pay, they would just leak your information out and leave your system completely stranded. Which again, depending on how sensitive your organization is, you probably do want to actually pay that ransom, even though every police agency tells you not to do it. Don't negotiate with the fucking terrorists, but, you know. It's easier said than done is all I can say. Now the thing about it is like this hack is kind of cute and everything, but ultimately at the end, you know, Lockbit was one of the largest hacking groups that existed at one point. And the thing about it is when you're making so much money in a shady industry like ransoming people on the dark web, you know, when you took down Lockbit, what effectively happened was you created a power vacuum, right? Like a whole bunch of people ended up slipping through the cracks. And ultimately, there's even more dangerous gangs that are out there. Gangs that used to be, you know, smaller than these guys. Now they're running the pack. So there's at least 3 big ransomware groups that currently run the hacking landscape of today. So you've got Ransom Hub, all right, one of them. You've got Black Cat or Alf V. And then, of course, the last one is Clop, okay? So yeah, you've got these 3 organizations that literally have done incredibly high-profile hacks and extortion schemes and now serve as basically the largest people in the game. And they're still raking in a shit ton of cash. So ultimately, all that really happened was you took down one player, you cut off one head of the Hydra, and somehow it just grew back into like 3 or 4 different Hydras. And they're even worse than the one that came before. This is the state of internet online cyber cartels, ladies and gentlemen. You know, it's always fun when I see these kind of hacks occur, and then I go back and look at what effectively happened. You know, a year ago I thought, maybe this might have made some serious changes. Maybe this might have killed this industry. But then you look at the amount of money being traded, and no, it's not going anywhere. There's a serious amount of actual cash to be earned, ransoming and shutting down entire mega corporations, big critical infrastructure, unfortunately even hospitals, and no one's willing to let such an easy paycheck go. But I think what's super important about this is obviously when it comes to Lockbit, which is still a very crippled organization, but they still seemingly like to work still in this day and age. They're still active. Getting those 60,000 Bitcoin addresses are probably one of the most important things for law enforcement people out there, or even if somebody's just investigating and seeing how much money these people have made, because ultimately it leads to this money being identified, flagged, and locked down from actually being used, which ultimately is a good thing, especially when you're dealing with criminal guys like this. Like, no matter what, you can have all the most like insane chat leaks out in the world, but the moment you go after their money, that's pretty much all that's the most important for them. But beyond all of that done, I think it's going to shed a really great light into seeing how these people launder their money and get away with it down the road. But yeah, you know, one of the largest dark web gangs, used to be one of the largest, ends up getting completely shamed and hacked once again. And it ain't a pretty look, all right? It really isn't. But ultimately, at the end, nobody is more happier than obviously a federal agent watching this. Yeah, your days are effectively fucking numbered. And, you know, for some people, you get to slip through the cracks, but in certain cases, the US will actually go through and extradite you. In one case, for Lockbit, they actually did extradite one Israeli developer, Rostislav Panev, literally for developing the actual ransomware for the system, right? And beyond just getting fined like crazy, you're actually looking at spending over 100 years if all the charges stick on you in prison. So again, if you're a keyboard samurai, all right, if you're a Wild West keyboard warrior, you best make sure you're real careful and you don't shit where you eat, because otherwise, that big old crime spree of yours can easily be shot dead instantaneously. But ladies and gentlemen, this is me, Mutahar, and thankfully this is something positive to see. And if you enjoyed this hack today, I think tomorrow might be one of the best hacks that I've ever seen. But I'll see how that goes. If you like what you saw, please like, comment, and subscribe. Dislike it if you dislike it. I am out.